Thank you very much, Mr. Claret. Thank you to the Anna Lindh Foundation for organizing this great forum, for bringing together this amazing group of people. It's really been very impressive. Thank you for all your efforts, and for the Anna Lindh team and all the volunteers who've put a tremendous amount of effort into this and a tremendous amount of time. I come from mainly an academic background. I'm actually I kind of feel guilty when people introduce me as an activist because I'm a newcomer to this thing. You know, I've only been an activist since the revolution, really, since Jan 25 of 2011, and there are people in my country who have been activists for years and years and years and years, so I just want you to keep this in mind. But I am active right now in following up on what's happening in the scene and on following up on the challenges facing the civic society, and so I hope to bring some kind of an objective assessment into the whole image. I think one of the things that we all recognize, even by the mere volume, the sheer volume of this crowd, is the importance of civic society as a main essential pillar of building any country, really, or for bringing about any process of change into any country, and particularly the countries on a transition to democracy, whether it's on the south or the north of the Mediterranean, whichever countries are now going through a process of transition, the civic society just takes on a whole new meaning. One of the things that I think arised out of the discussions of this forum is the very core idea of what is the civic society, what constitutes the civic society. Are we talking about it in a comprehensive enough manner? Should we be more specific because then we allow certain organizations to actually do something, or should we be more broad and comprehensive and include things like the labor unions, include the private sector, the governmental bodies? What are the limitations or what are the borders of the civic society within each respective country? And I don't think that we necessarily have to arrive at a particular answer that would fit in every country. I think maybe each country should look at its own model and try to come up with an answer that satisfies the country's own needs during that particular moment in time. But I think it might be an important debate to keep in the back of our minds. We've seen some great topics of discussion come up during this forum. We've seen discussions of women, of youth, of media, of creativity, of culture. But again, as you know, some of the voices that have been raised this morning pointed out, do we need more than these issues? Do we need more discussions of human rights, details of what's happening? Do we need discussions of social rights? Do we need more discussions of minority rights? Do we need more discussions and maybe even best practices on how to lobby and how to pressure the governments in repressive regimes? Do we know how to force change in the direction that we want? If the governments stand in the way of true democratic transition, how do we go about that? If the governments do not play with the civic society, but rather against the civic society, what do we do with that? Can the north of the Mediterranean, or at least the robust systems in the north, help the south accelerate the period of transition? How far is an organization like the EU willing to go to pressure governments who stand against their own civic society? How far are we all going to sort of stand up and make a united stand against powers of repression? That's a question that I think should be maybe more formally discussed in forums to come. So in other words, this very nice gathering of people, these great voices that we've heard, have we been talking to ourselves? Again, as the point was made, how do we take the great discussions that took place in this forum? How do we take that to the street? How do we actually have some tangible outcomes out of the great discussions that we've had? How do we make sure to implement our recommendations? What techniques do we have to measure the success of the initiatives that have come up? What techniques do we have to scientifically monitor the progress that's happening in certain organizations or in certain societies? I'm personally happy to see a change, at least a perceived change in my own perception in the strategy of the Anna Lindh Foundation over the last couple of years at least. a change that I believe is a reaction to what's happening in the region, and that's necessary at this point. It's not just enough to talk about, culture and the arts and, the movies, and these are all great things and incredibly important. But there are other issues that are more politically oriented. Let's face it. It's getting political, and I think the whole civic society and everybody that stands for that should get more involved with that, because it's a very real challenge that we're facing right now. And that change is a sign of a breathing body. It's a sign that an organization is alive and well, and that the civic society is alive and well. The political changes that are taking place are obviously very historic, but we have to realize that we cannot operate in a vacuum. So we have to react to what's happening, to the new needs of the region, and we have to take the ideas that we spoke about to the street. And in light of that, I ask, do we need platforms for dialogue for the civic society that are fully organized and run by the civic society? Do we need civic society representation maybe on the board of the Anna Lindh Foundation? Something for you to think about. There have been quite a few very impressive aspects of this forum. The quality of the discussions in the Agora sessions were truly impressive. The creativity and the originality of some of the best practices shared in the Medina sessions were truly impressive. The diversity of the people in this forum, the group of representatives that the Anna Lindh Foundation chose to bring into this forum was truly impressive. We are reminded once again that we share so many common values, yet we are each unique in a very special way, and we need to celebrate our diversity and celebrate our uniqueness. But one of the most impressive elements that I've seen during this forum is the youth. Everything related to youth was extremely impressive. The spirit of youth is extremely impressive, and I'd like to pay a very special tribute to the Young Arab Voices program. You guys have been amazing, really. It's been an amazing program. And that's what gives me personally hope that our region is headed into a better future, even if it takes time, even if it takes more time than we originally thought, even if we were more romantic about it at the beginning and now we're faced with the realities of the situation. We are headed somewhere good, and there's no going back on that. In terms of recommendations, I want to emphasize on three main types of recommendations that I've seen come up. Number one has to do with the practical aspect of training, exchange programs, exchanging expertise, sharing best practices, learning of each other's cultures. It's not just a one-way street. The issue of paternalism came up several times. It's not just about the North giving expertise to the South. It's also about the cultures of the South, the diversity of the cultures in the South. Does the North really understand what's happening in the South? Does the South really understand what's happening within the cultures of the North? How do we educate each other about each other's cultures and each other's values? How do we learn of our similarities and celebrate our differences? And again, diversity is very important here. The second type of recommendation that I'd like to stress on is monitoring, some kind of assessment to the efforts that are going on, monitoring the media, but also monitoring human rights, monitoring police brutality in countries, monitoring corruption, making sure that there is a mechanism to report violations and to hold the violators accountable, to hold somebody responsible, monitoring our own progress on the issues that we talk about. What were our accomplishments and what are the challenges that we are facing? And the third and final type of recommendation is advocacy. Perhaps maybe a permanent network of interested parties could come out of a forum like this that could be easily mobilized to get together, to help each other with the issues that are needed and the challenges that are faced in each particular country. And on the advocacy note, and I think this is very, very important at this point in history, really, in the region. And my message to everyone in this room is this: do not equate the oppressor with the oppressed. لا تساووا بين القاهر والمقهور. To donor organizations, donor entities, the international community, please do not support oppressive governments. لا تدعموا الحكومات القمعية. On whichever level you're working, do not equate the oppressor with the oppressed, and do not support oppressive governments. Please do not turn a blind eye to human rights violations in the hope that particular regimes will bring about stability. We've all seen that does not happen. Freedom of expression is essential. This is not something that we can give any leeway about. This is not something that we can negotiate. Freedom of expression is essential. Freedom of the media is essential. Freedom of the civic society to form and to act is essential. The right to associate, to peacefully protest, to organize is essential. Human rights are essential. Minimum wages are essential. Basic health, basic education are essential. Speak up against repression on all levels. Do not turn a blind eye on violators. The southern part of the Mediterranean, as well as parts of the northern part, are going through a unique period of transition. We are making history here. Let me assure you, in the long run, the winning party is the people. It's the people on the streets. It's the civic society. So celebrate diversity and support the people. Thank you.